Yeah, my name's Rob Ryder, speaking out of Cornwall. So this is probably my last couple of videos I want to do, because I said I'd only do videos now unless it was something relevant. So this is the book I wrote with Patrick Quanton, Medical Despotism, the Health, Economic and Political Program That Can Kill You. So this is a follow-up. So when the lockdown and the madness happened, I'd already had a book in my head because I'd been warning about this stuff for quite a lot of years. And the original book I wrote on my own was Medical Fascism, How Coronavirus Policies Took Away Our Freedom and How to Get Them Back. I wrote that book just to get some information out there. And then when the madness has calmed down a bit, I thought, right now, this moment in history really needs to be put completely into perspective. And to do that, I need an extra bit into it of medical science. So I asked Patrick to come along, him coming from that arena, to write a good few chapters on the medical science and how that can be manipulated. So we changed the book from medical fascism to medical despotism, because fascism, depends what your definition of fascism is. They can slightly vary. It's kind of like government corporate takeover. It's quite, again, it depends on the definition. But despotism is quite clear that it's complete and utter power and control. And this is why I asked Patrick to do the chapters on medical science, because this is where we're going now. Something I've been warning about for many years. I did a talk about 8 years ago locally called Medical Fascism, the biggest threat to our children's health. And I was trying to warn people how self-proclaimed experts are utilizing allopathic thinking and germ theory to create fear and also create control. And what's basically happened is birth, just being alive, and death have become medicalized. So everything now is a medical condition, from conception to death. The whole expanse of your life is now kind of a medical condition because of allopathic thinking, germ theory, contagion, and the so-called experts, self-proclaimed experts who are behind this. Now, if you go back to the previous video I did, a talk I did recently about defining health, I put a lot of figures up there that are in this book about the legacy of modern medicine and how even official figures put them as the third biggest killer in the West, with the contributory factors to people dying. Doesn't take into account other issues like long-term consequences of suppression, basically from birth. So my opinion is allopathic medicine, its treatments, its preventative, should we say, are the biggest cause of death in the Western society. And I claim that they've created chronic health. You'd have to go listen to the talk that I did to go into that more. But medical despotism, what I realized when I realized the fraud of germ theory and contagion, when I realized what we would call an acute healing crisis has been medicalized as an illness, then especially now as a parent, you've got no power, no control over your children's health. So being pregnant now is a medical condition. They insist on all these scans that we don't know. There has to be an effect. When there's a cause, there has to be an effect. And we've gone through that on previous videos with Patrick. All the tests they're doing. A test for what? Well, if we find something, therefore, and we've decided that we don't like it, we have to treat it. So they test women now for bacterial infections, whereas you're made up of bacteria. It's ridiculous. Even though you've got a healthy woman, oh, we've found this bacteria. Is it causing a problem? Oh no, but it could potentially, it may, and so it needs treated. So just being pregnant is a medical condition. The birth is a medical procedure now. It's not a natural procedure that just happens in nature, and everything's been medicalized. And the whole idea of having a natural birth, where maybe at home you delay cutting the cord, straight onto the mother, all this has been medicalized. So the baby gets out quick, cut the cord quick, we need to weigh it, we need to clean it, blah, blah, blah. And then the mother will get hold of the baby. And then as soon as that's done and you've had 2 minutes rest from this whole emotional issue of having a baby, they come in with the threats to put the vitamin K injection in on the basis that babies are low in vitamin K. Well, define low. Low compared to what? To an adult. Well, a baby isn't an adult. If all babies are low in vitamin K, that's because nature's decided that. And then the threats come in, which I've been through myself, of, oh, well, I'm not saying you're a bad parent and neglecting, but, if this happens, if that happens. What I did when I was there, I just, because I got the midwife and the pediatrician come in all threatening me, basically threatening me to have this vitamin K. And I just took a deep breath, pause, and said, listen, come back in, bring me the ingredients on the list, and we'll continue the conversation. They never came back. But it was all threats, all threats. So being pregnant is a medical condition now. Being born is a medical condition. Being alive now, because from birth now they have their checks. So from conception, say to the first year, if you don't want to go along with all these checks and procedures, that could well be considered a safeguarding issue, a red flag. Yeah, if you're the most natural thing in the world is to get pregnant, have a baby, and nurture your baby for the first year on your own. It's not a medical procedure. We don't need science, medical experts involved in this. But now, because we're all owned by the state, because we are, or at least the state believes they own us, and the vast majority of people actually believe the state do own us, because they go along with everything. They haven't seen through the illusion yet of the state. And if you're not going along with all these procedures and checks, then the threat states everything. So everything is a red flag. When you decline, everything is a red flag. So if you've done your research on vaccination, decide not to vaccinate, that's a red flag. And then the threats will come in. Even in their own system, you're not obliged to vaccinate, even they're under their own illusionary system. But the threats will come in. And they're very subtle threats, but they're there. Now, what I was warning people about, not only that, but your child gets, should we say, ill. Yeah, what I'm saying, an acute healing crisis, a fever, a perfectly natural thing. The system's growing and developing. Coughs, colds, fevers, all these things are perfectly natural. They're not diseases. They're just healing crises where the system's adjusting, clearing out. Because we've been so miseducated as parents on what that actually is, a lot of us, well-meaning, will go to the doctors every time your child's toddler, baby, got any kind of symptom. And the doctors only do is suppress. I've said, in my opinion, Calpol is one of the most destructive medicines, because you're giving it for every little subtle thing and you're not allowing the child to grow physically and emotionally to deal with acute healing crisis. Now, acute healing crisis, say an inflammation, is pain, redness, swelling, heat. It's going to be uncomfortable. We have to learn to grow, to develop as strong human beings, to learn to deal with being uncomfortable and going through a painful healing crisis. We're not allowed to do that now, out of fear, and also out of that could be a safeguarding issue. You've allowed your child to be ill. No, I've allowed my child to go through a healing crisis. A typical thing would be a bit of a cough and a cold, a slightly raised temperature. Okay, have 3 days off life. You know, lower food intake or stop food if it's a high fever. The child won't want to eat anyway. Sit on the couch with your mum, watch Scooby-Doo DVDs, and make it a healing environment. Yeah, the child will go through that, learn to be comfortable in the discomfort, grow and develop. That 3 days on the couch with the mum watching Scooby-Doo, everything's fine, and that will go in to their system of a memory. This is what I do every time I have a healing crisis. I'm not ill, it's just a healing crisis that I need to go through. I just need to rest and let my system sort itself out. That's why I've raised my kids, and they're never ill. And when they do get in a cough and cold, they're not panicking. They're just, oh, I'll take a day off today. That could be seen as neglect in this system, and I realized that many years ago, and that's why I was warning people that allowing your child to go through a healing crisis now could potentially be a red flag, because, oh, it could be this or it could be that, and they could die. That's all fear-based nonsense. Interfering in a healing crisis is where danger lies. So you've got conception now is a medical condition, the pregnancy, the birth, the development of the child. The moment you go into their system, they have complete power. You may think as a parent you have the decision making over your child's medical treatment. You don't. They will listen to your concerns and it, whatever, but eventually, if they've decided we're going to do that, they're going to do it, and they'll rip the child out of you if that's what they see. They will force vaccinate because they can get court orders. There was a case, I don't know the full details, but the UK column did some reporting on it, when a young 16-year-old girl had just a cyst in her breast, and the doctor wanted to claim ownership of her breast, so that if he felt he wanted to, he could remove the breast. And he went to, I don't know what the outcome of that, but these are just one in many cases. If a child is diagnosed with a certain medical condition, the pathway of treatment is fixed. That's it. You've got no say. If you want to go through a healthy, natural, should we say, detox, that's a safeguarding issue. Now, as Henry Lindlar in his book Nature Cure over 120 years ago, whatever, has shown, nature's way is by far having the best outcomes in an acute healing crisis or in a chronic illness condition. The allopathic way has a terrible record, and yet these self-proclaimed experts who are just brainwashed into what they're doing have been given this power to take control and do whatever they wish because they're the experts. Doesn't matter what the data says, that they're the experts. And there's other videos I've done of why these people have been brainwashed. I did a video, common purpose, nice people doing bad things. You have to understand the psychology behind this. But the moment you step into their system, you've lost power. If it's a child, because they have no. Then if you have even an adult who has, shall we say, difficulties, learning difficulties, again, the parental power can be taken away because it's the expert's opinion that counts. And going through life now, we're having constant tests. Yeah. The test will tell you if you're a danger to society or not. And the test will tell you you're on a pathway to death. So they'll do a test for whatever. They'll get the results back. They'll put a label on it, a name, and they say the pathway to this is death unless you do that. No evidence to back that up. That's just what they say. And there's no argument with them. There's lots I could say now, but you've got to be very careful now. We have no freedom of speech in this country. Absolutely no freedom of speech. But there's lots of examples of tyrannical behavior from the medical system, tyrannical. And so being alive is a medical condition. They're always testing your levels, mostly meaningless, but and then they'll put a label on it, and you need this and you need that. And then you're coming into death now, and death is a medical condition. But it's the most natural thing in the world to die. You go older, you lose energy, bits don't work quite as well as they should, and then you get to your mid-80s, mid-90s, and then your body goes down pretty quick and you drift off. That's how it's supposed to go. But now it's a medical condition. They want you in there to get the last bit of drugs and money out of you as they can. They don't know that's what they're doing, but death is the most natural thing that can happen. But it's been medicalized. And if you, as a son, challenge the system because your mother, your father, grandmother, whatever, is being forced to go down to a path that they don't really want to go to, again, it can get taken out of your hands. And even your burial, you know, my mate died a few years back, and he just said to the people, "Oh, just put me in a bag and the bin man will take me." He was not interested in them, the system, getting the last bit of money out of him, but he was forced to have a funeral and pay for it out of his, you know, whatever money he had left. So they control us from conception now to death. And we know to harvest the organs, there has to be a little bit of life there because they're even as fresh as possible. The whole system, medical system, is tyrannical now. And the only way out of it is to educate ourselves in what health is, what an acute healing crisis is, what disease is, and become self-empowered and go our own way. Stop relying on them, even though they can impose on us. And to some extent, we've got to come together and say to the system, we don't agree that's a medical condition, being alive. We don't agree that birth is a medical condition. It's well publicized now, all the problems that are happening in maternity wards, well publicized, the treatment, and this is because it's been medicalized. And anyone wants to home birth is weird and a danger, and it's a safeguarding issue. Everything's become a safeguarding issue now. This is how mad the world is. It's utterly insane, and unfortunately there's not enough people standing up against it. Many years back when my daughter was in school, going back quite a lot of years now, so this is when I challenged it, it was about 2010, so a long while back, when I had seen a company that wanted to come into my daughter's school to teach 9 and 10-year-olds masturbation and sexual experimentation. I went absolutely apeshit, but was calm. I went in, said, that ain't happening. My daughter does not go into that class. I told quite a few parents. Nobody was interested in backing me up. Through my daughter's life in school, she was never in those sex classes, and I was the only one who did it. I was the only one who stood up to it. Most people laughed, didn't want to know, or even agreed with it. And now we're at this stage now that because nobody stood up to it before, we're at this stage now where this kind of sexual education it has to be done now. It's got compulsory in many areas. There's very little you can do about it. That's because it was allowed to take place. And this is what we're dealing in all aspects of our lives now, is this despotism, but what I'm calling medical despotism, in that we've lost all our power. They, the self-proclaimed rulers and owners of us, have taken over all areas of society. And it's difficult because a lot of people are going along with it and supporting it. So you've got the woke left, should we say, who are actually supporting all this. We're at a point now where pretty much nobody in society believes in freedom anymore. They keep proclaiming freedom, but then they want to impose themselves on other people. Oh yeah, freedom of speech, but you can't say that. Yeah, freedom of expression, but you can't do that. Or you have to do that, even worse. You've got blasphemy laws, freedom of speech, hate speech, all these laws now that we've welcomed in. A lot of people want more of it, and this tyranny is going to continue, and it's very dangerous from the medical side unless people educate themselves in, again, acute healing crisis, chronic illness, how we get ill, what is actually an illness, start to empower themselves and challenge the system and draw a line in the sand and say, listen, no, the more people say to the system, no, this is, you're going beyond there, beyond authority, as common purpose would say. And, you know, this book explains the complete moment in time of the lockdown, all the history behind it, connects the political and economic system behind it and the goal behind it, the medical science now with Patrick behind it, and how that's being used now to control. And unless more and more people educate themselves and speak out, it's getting worse and worse. It's very difficult to see how a parent now can keep control of their own children and get the hands of the state off them. Everything's become a red flag. People who don't want to vaccinate, people who, should we say, want to lead a healthy life are being classed as weird and a threat and a danger, despite the evidence showing that they're the healthier ones. This is how insane the world is. So unless we take our own sovereignty back, unless we break the illusion of authority and the fact that they're not experts, it's only going to get worse. Only going to get worse. So medical despotism is what we're living in now. There's many, many examples where the state are just taking control and forcing their expertise on people from conception to death. Being alive is not a medical condition, and it's been made into a medical condition. And Patrick done a full chapter in this on medical testing and how that's being used and how mainly meaningless these tests are. So that's basically the reason behind medical despotism, why it progressed from medical fascism to medical despotism. And just educate yourself, start taking your own decisions, self-empowerment, learning to say no to the system, which is difficult. I'm not saying it's easy, but medical despotism is what we're living in.